with the actual demo, I want to provide a little bit of context first. So first thing is, many of you may not have seen the tool yet, so we want to make sure that you know where it lives. It is on the website. If you need there's a subdirectory, but if you need to get it quickly, sizeup.info/Charleston will get you to the tool if you want to play along with our particular game here. And so what I want to talk about is why an online business intelligence tool. And really the value proposition is different depending on who you are. For the local businesses, they're competing against really big businesses that have access to this type of data. The difference is the big businesses either get this information from their own in-house business analysts that are oftentimes getting paid six-figure salaries plus benefits, or for even larger businesses, they're going to the Deloittes and McKinseys of the world, and most small businesses can't afford that. And so now, through the investment, through the sponsorship of Fifth Third, you're providing access to the same type of data that big businesses have for small businesses, and it can help them optimize their business decision making. Two, we all know that you're very busy supporting local businesses, but as a father of two daughters, I also know that you're busy living your personal life, so you're not available 24/7 to help small businesses. A lot of small businesses engage with this type of information in the evenings and on weekends because they're so busy running their business, creating their product, providing their services Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, that they tend to take these steps, the analysis, the first steps towards expansion, or pivoting in terms of how they're running their business when traditional business assistance organizations aren't available. Three, while the tool that we're going to show you is very, very powerful with the same data sets that big businesses are using, we put it in a very simple to use platform. We don't ask for NAICS or SIC codes because we know that 95% of small businesses don't even know what those are. They know that they run a coffee shop in Charleston, right? They don't know all these other things. And there's a report creator. So we know that while the journey starts online, that we give them an opportunity to take the data, take the information they've received, and they can put it to PDF or cut and paste it into a loan application or into Excel if they want to do analysis, so they can continue the journey with their business assistance organization, their attorney, their accountant, their partner, or their the group that they're asking to invest in their business or their startup. So I want to provide a little bit of context about the environment that we're in right now. So these are new business formations going back to 2004. You see this dip right here? That was the start of the pandemic. We thought that was the trend. Actually, we've seen a surge of entrepreneurship that is unprecedented in the history of the United States. And you'll see that even though it's gone up and down, even the lowest lows now are still higher than the previous highest highs. And we thought, okay, well, maybe this will end when the pandemic ends. But we can see that across the United States, and you notice I'm going to throw three regions here. Normally, we just say, you're Cleveland, it's the Midwest. Because you're West Virginia, in many ways, depending on what organization you're doing the analysis with, including the census, you might be the Middle Atlantic, you might be the Midwest, you might be the South, you might be the Northeast. So I'm going to show you the trends for all of these regions from the census. This is the South. You can see a similar trend. Here is the Midwest, here is the Northeast. So you can see while there's variations, the overall trend is towards entrepreneurship. Why does this matter? Well, let me show you the first 5-year survival rates for businesses. And I'm rounding here, 40%, about a third of businesses fail due to natural deaths. Now, we're just talking about the breakdown. If we look at it overall, we're like, wow, within 5 years, new businesses about 50% fail. But notice I talked about that third. Those businesses are going to fail. They're going to die natural deaths because they're selling horseshoes when people move to cars, or they're still trying to fix fax machines when people need computers fixed. So there's certain businesses that just aren't aligned with changes, and it's going to happen despite our best efforts to help them. But 2/3 of the businesses that die could survive if they were better prepared. And a major portion of that preparation is data. They need the same information that big businesses have so they can optimize their business decisions. So we can take businesses by providing them great data. Ones that might die will survive, and ones that are surviving can thrive. And that's what SizeUp will do. So I know you haven't seen it yet, And we're only going to be able to look through certain examples because we don't have an infinite amount of time to look at every type of business and every location. But what I do want to explain is that SizeUp can work for any business with any use case. We talk about small businesses. We know how that's defined, right? But it can work for large businesses, small businesses, medium-sized businesses in any industry. And we can look at it at whatever level. So just looking at it from a retail perspective, we could look at all restaurants, or we could get narrower and say we're looking at Italian restaurants, or I just want to benchmark against pizza. That works on the retail side. We could also look at manufacturing. So we could look at all manufacturing, everything from metal foundries to, like CNC, machines with 2 or 3 people working there, all the way down to like foam and plastic foam pillows. You can go as broad or as deep as you want. In the context of this particular demonstration, because there are an infinite amount of use cases, I really want to look at 3 specific use cases: a specialty burger shop in Charleston, a carpenter in Dunbar, and a dentist in St. Albans. And I'll walk you through the reasons we're doing this as we go through to look at a B2C or business to consumer model, a business to business, and then a professional, in the case of like a dentist, attorney, so on and so forth. The other thing I want to explain is we were talking about the industries themselves, right? We can go from restaurants to Italian to pizza. The same thing happens with the analysis. The analysis can extend to whatever the trade or marketing area is for a business. So if you're a neighborhood business, a neighborhood bar, a neighborhood burger shop, you can look at that information at the neighborhood level. If you're creating things, even if you're a small jewelry designer, but you happen to sell on eBay or Etsy, you can do the analysis at the national level if that's what your trade area is. It will support every type of business in the locations within the region. So to break things down, we're going to talk about 3 modules that match up to those particular examples that I used. So for the business ranking module, we're going to look at the burger shop. For competition, we'll look for the carpenter. And then for advertising, we'll go ahead and look at that dentist. So let me just pause there. That was a lot to take in, but I want to make sure there's enough time for the demo and the Q&A. Any questions that people have about what we're going to cover? Okay, I don't see any mute red microphones turning off into white ones, so I'm going to go ahead and share a different part of the screen with you, which should be the actual application itself. All right. Can I get a quick head nod if you're seeing my browser? Awesome. Great. So this is the tool. And as I mentioned, it's a powerful tool, but really simple to use. So we only asked 2 questions to get started. I hope we can answer these questions. If you're an existing business, you absolutely should be able to answer these questions. Now, as I mentioned, we could look at restaurants, right? We could look at all restaurants. We can look at Charleston. And then we're going to come to the chooser. So this helps people do the type of analysis they're interested in. For the purposes of the demonstration, we're just going to work left to right. And we're going to go to the measure your business performance. Now, remember I said we can look at any level. We can look at restaurants, we can look at Italian, we can look at pizza. You see, you just type it in and you select it. For the example I'm in, we're going to look at a gourmet burger restaurant. Does anyone want to come off mute or put in chat what they think the typical burger restaurant is making in Charleston? Is anyone brave enough to guess?
$100,000.
$100,000. Okay, let's put that in. And now you just started where a lot of entrepreneurs do. They have an idea, they have a product, they have a skill set, they have grandma's secret recipe, but they don't know a lot about their industry because they haven't run it. So $100,000 is actually not a lot for a gourmet burger shop. The average burger shop is making 1.9 million. Let's go ahead and just so the scales a little bit more, let's go ahead and let's make it 1.25 million. And now we can also see in every single KPI, we can see a table view and a chart view of the information. We can see a map view showing us where concentrations of revenue are happening within that given industry. And then we can dive into that as much as we want. We can also look at the overall timeline of new business formations within this given industry. So let's say that I'm a neighborhood gourmet. I'm not McDonald's, I'm not, Burger King. So I'm not interested in what's happening from a national perspective about the 3,000 new burger restaurants. I want to see what's happening, not even at the state level, but just the metro city and level. And while you may think that there's burger shops everywhere, in 2021, there were actually 3 new started in the metro area, 2 in the county and 1 in the city. So there's still new burger shops opening. So maybe this isn't a saturated marketplace, and there's room for me to grow my business or to start my business. We can also look at salary. So $25,000 may not seem like a lot of money, but actually it's very competitive for the county, the metro, and the state region. Now, again, we're a gourmet burger shop, so maybe there's things to explore about that salary, why ours is a little bit above average. And so we can look at the blended salary. So this is the salary across all people working within a given industry, or we can actually dive in deeper. So in the same way we talked about restaurants, Italian pizza, we can now go in here and say, well, you know what? I'm actually interested in, what a host or hostess might be making. And I can add other categories, like I can look at a cook, or I could look at a food service manager. So I can look at all of the different roles that are available within this given gourmet burger restaurant to see what individual people, what members of that team are making. So I can understand what their average and median hourly wage would be, to understand perhaps the type of salaries I would have to generate in revenue to support this team. I think we can all agree that 10 people is a small business. So I'll go ahead and put that in. We can actually see that's a very small burger shop. Nicole, you had a question, but you're on mute, so you're gonna have to come off mute to ask it.
Of course I am. So just curious, this is specific to, I know we looked up, we wanted to see specific for gourmet burger, but if you just wanted to do restaurant and look at these kind of salaries and wages, you could be more general, right? It doesn't have to be as specific as when you're picking out what the industry is. You don't have to be as specific as burger. You could just say restaurant or manufacturing, manufacturer.
Absolutely.
You could be more general, right?
Okay. You can look at the top level. So like literally you could say not even just restaurants, just food, everything from a dairy farmer to, the sommelier at White Tablecloth. It's as broad or as deep as you want it to be. And even within that category, let's say that you're going to have your coffee and it's going to be so hot that you're going to get sued when someone, goes through your drive-through. Here we go. Here's what your average lawyer is making in terms of average salary. So you can go ahead and define what it is that you're looking. So we got rid of the business manager because we just want to have our super hot coffee and not get sued. So here's our lawyer who's going to create the disclaimer for our gourmet burger restaurant and drive-through coffee shop, whatever it may be. So you can define things how you want. And the same thing with employees. Maybe this model is different because it's not like a fast food place where you're trying to do a whole bunch. You're not trying to make the money on volume, but on quality. So you have 10 employees. And this is why it's so valuable. This is why SizeUp is so valuable. Is we're not giving you generic information about burger shops. We're giving you information about your burger shop with your use case, your products, your service model, your marketing area. And you can see where burger shops are bigger or smaller within the metro region. And I'm not going to focus a lot on the maps right now because you have an additional module that can give you hyper-local information even beyond what you're seeing right now. So we're looking at the size of employees and the employees per capita. And now guess what's happening? We had a below average in terms of revenue burger shop. We have an above average salary. Things aren't looking good. But what we now recognize is we're doing more with less. We have a third of the typical number of employees. And now we thought, oh, we're below average and we're spending more. Our cost effectiveness in terms of revenue generated by employee and their salary is 34% above average. We might have thought, just looking at one criteria, that our business wasn't going well. But now through the lens of objective data, we can see that we're really performing. This is the type of information that can help us make an expansion decision. And we can see where, in what parts of town or in what cities, your cost effectiveness is higher, where people are more effective at what they do in that, per hour basis. We can look at revenue per capita. So you notice these maps are different. What's different about them? One is showing you the concentration of where that income is taking place, or revenue is being generated, and where the people are that live, where they're spending that money. And you can see where people are spending more in revenue per capita, whether it's in the city, in the county, in the metro area. And we can look at retention rates. So imagine if we were a gourmet burger shop with 10 employees and we're losing 1 employee per year and we're frustrated. That's 1/10 of our workforce. How awful is it that we have to recruit, retrain 1/10 of our workforce? But objectively, through the lens of data, you should be losing about 2 people. What you thought was a weakness for your business is actually a strength. Something about your product, your culture, your service that's allowing you to retain more than your fair share of gourmet burger restaurant employees. We can also look at information that is oftentimes opaque to small businesses. They don't have that back office HR person who's crunching numbers or doing analysis on things like healthcare costs. So maybe you look there and you go, hey, it's about 5,000. Well, the state average is 6,993. I'm doing a pretty good job managing those things. Or maybe my costs are actually higher. Maybe they're 8,000 and I need to figure out if there's like an aggregation service where I can combine my business with others to get more cost-effective healthcare. All sorts of different things that small businesses don't think about because they don't have that professional back office person managing this, or looking at, say, workers' compensation. Now, there's another value that we can look at. How many hours are you open? Let's say that I'm running this burger shop, but boy, I have things to do. I got kids in school. I got to get home. Maybe I'm only running it 50 hours a week. Is that competitive with what other types of businesses are doing? Wow. So I'm actually feeling really good about my business right now because the average burger shop's open 101 hours. So I'm making more money with fewer employees, right, relative, and I'm doing it in less time. And you can see when businesses are typically open, and I can see, and that's all businesses, or I can just look at businesses in my particular industry. Now we can start to see some things, which is clearly your burger shops in Charleston. You guys like to get your McMuffins a little bit earlier, but you want to get home and spend time with your family. You're opening a little earlier and closing a little bit earlier than the national average. But if you're not interested, as you were in the other example of how many burger restaurants are opening, you're a local place. Who cares about what's happening nationally? I just want to understand what's happening both in the city, county, and metro area to understand if I'm expanding, maybe my hours need to switch between one location or another. Or if I'm planning on opening a business, I need to understand when I'm going to need to be available based on the typical patterns of businesses within the industry. So these are sort of the core KPIs or key performance indicators, benchmarks for a business. But we can also tell them where businesses in their industry are marketing. So I'm going to go ahead. Nicole asked the question. So Nicole's Gourmet Burgers. I don't know if that domain's registered. It should. And we can find out a lot of burger shops have websites. We can look at Facebook. We can see where it's more or less important. We can look at Instagram. So you get an idea of where, and if we were looking at, I'm sure, professional things, you'd see LinkedIn for attorneys or accountants or bookkeepers much higher than, say, social media like Twitter and Instagram. So apparently, if you are marketing your burger restaurant, Twitter is, at least right now, the least important social media outlet to put your information on. Maybe it's generating the least amount of leads for your food pictures. You can even look at, say, YouTube, and you can see where industries are or are not advertising. And we have a summary view, so you can look at all of this information at a dashboard level. So if you want to start doing scenarios, we can go through and say, hey, you know what? Boy, I have 10 employees. They're doing fantastically. I do want to generate more revenue, but I don't want to lose more employees. They're burning out. So maybe we generate another, $250,000, but I'm going to add 3 people to kind of lower the stress level. What is the overall impact besides being trichodexophobic? That's fear of the number 13 in terms of your employee count. What does that happen in terms of cost effectiveness? So I went for I think 37% to 23%. I'm still making decent profit, right? Based on this cost effectiveness level, but I've lowered the overall stress and impact on my workforce to help me retain that 10% loss rate, right? Because I'm being responsive to the level of velocity of business that we're doing for our various employees. So you can see all of that information happen at the dashboard level, or dive into those individual KPIs to look at that specific part of your business that you want to perform analysis on. So this is the first of 4 modules that I talked about, and that is the gourmet burger restaurant in Charleston. So let me pause there and see if there are any questions specific to this particular module. And Armando, if there were any that came up in chat, please let me know.
Nope, not at this time.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and move to the next example, but I'm going to have to remind myself what that was. And I'm pretty sure that it was a carpenter in Dunbar. But before I move on, I will show you just a very quick thing, which is the heat maps on the competition tool. So right now, again, we were looking at B2C. Here's burger restaurants. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. We can go ahead and select a category, food and beverages, food away from home. In the same way, and Nicole, maybe you were going to ask this question. We were doing analysis at restaurants, right? Italian pizza, or however you want to think about it. We can do the same thing with the heat maps. We can look at all food and beverages. We can look at food away from home. And let's say that we're really focused on lunch. Now we're showing just expenditures at the block group level for lunch. So we're seeing hyperlocal information on household spending. And we can even look at average expenditure. So these people over here like burgers about 3 times as much as the people over there. And so you can look at it both as aggregate, because there may be a denser population, right? Or you can look at it as household expenditures. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because we'll get to very specific mapping later. Super powerful tool. But I did want to show you that you can overlay that information. Was there a question? I'm sorry. Okay, so we're going to move forward then. So let's talk about carpentry. And I believe I was moving this carpentry business to Dunbar. So there we go. So what you're going to notice, we have a whole list of carpentry related businesses now, right? So and you can see them. These are your competitors. Totally understandable. But let's do something else. Seeing our competitors is great. We can understand where they are, what they're doing, but let's talk about really understanding the entire ecosystem that we're working in. So you notice there's 3 tabs here: competitors, customers, and suppliers. And I think seeing your competitors is really valuable, understanding where they are. But I'm running a 4 to 5 person carpentry crew. We're not a framing carpenter. We're not building the frames of houses or anything like that, but we're a finished carpenter. So we're building cabinets, closets, built-ins, things of that nature. So things that could be used for single family home construction. So like more boutique homes as opposed to production homes. So I just went in and you saw I added single family house construction. And now I'm getting all of the information related to businesses that are building single family homes. You get the idea. So you can look at this. You could use this and go ahead and use it as a prospecting list or to find out where your suppliers are. But we also know that that skill set, that carpentry skill set, that carpentry business could also serve, in the commercial and office building construction, because maybe you're building bookcases for attorneys to store all their papers in, or dentists to file all their patient files in. So we can add or subtract as many business industries as suits our particular business plan. So now we've gone ahead and highlighted all of those businesses, so we can use it to prospect. We can use it to just understand kind of the spatial relations of everything. We can zoom in and we can zoom out. What else might I need as a carpenter? The thing that comes to mind for me is wood, lumber, right? I got to build things with stuff. So I've already looked at where my competitors are and where my customers or potential customers are in the case of prospecting, but I need to look at supply chain. So maybe I look at hardware stores. Perfectly fine. We're going to see all of the hardware. Here's Home Depot, big box store. Here's their address, here's their social media. I can see if they have the piece of lumber that I need, whatever it is. This is great, but maybe I'm working on a really big project. So something that Home Depot is not going to have, right? It's not just a single home or two homes. It's a big project. And so I might want to actually get rid of hardware stores because I need to look at lumber wholesalers. And so we're going to see that here's the Pearson Lumber Company right over here in Clay, West Virginia. But in this case, it turns out that this is a very high-end law firm. And what I really need to know is specifically there's a very special Montana pine tree with the right type of grain for this law firm. While the analysis always starts in Charleston, you can go ahead and zoom out all the way to Wisconsin to see the Jackson Creek Wood Products Company, or you can really get a good deal on this famous Montana pine from the Rye Timber Company in Montana. So the analysis can extend to whatever you think your trade area is, whatever you want to source from. It doesn't matter. And maybe you want to go ahead and add in some additional categories because maybe you want to make cabinets. You can always do that. And then what it'll do is it'll bring you back to the home where you were looking at the information. So you can navigate this by number, right? Or you can even just click on the pin and see the information that you need. So whether you're list oriented or whether you're map oriented, SizeUp will work for you however you need it to. And if there's a specific business you're looking for, you're not just limited to industries. You can actually say here, I want to look at lumber liquidators. You can just type in the name of the business that you are looking for, whether you're prospecting or whether you're trying to identify suppliers. And you can see here's your 1 through 10 based on the city that you chose as the center of analysis. And here you can pin businesses. So 1 through 10 are your pin businesses, or I'm sorry, your listed businesses, and ABC, however many you want, can get pinned here so you know specifically where those businesses are located. And then you can click on them and find out. So that is the competition module. Let me pause there and ask for questions.
So this is less about competition, Mario, and you may be getting ready to address this because I see suppliers up there. Mm-hmm. But if you knew that, say, your competitor was producing some sort of special hinge on a cabinet, and you wanted to find or they were producing a cabinet that has a special hinge, and you wanted to find that hinge to produce the same kind of cabinet, is there a way to search for that, like kind of the way you search for the wood? Like, can you just put in like cabinet hinges or something? And
sure. So again, we're at the suppliers tab. We can get rid of lumber wholesale. Let's clean up the map a little bit. Otherwise, we're going to look like we have some weird version of chicken pox if we add too many industries in. But sure, if you wanted to type in, I almost think that might fall under the fastenings. Yeah. So here's industrial fasteners, wholesale, miscellaneous fasteners, fasteners and fastening equipment. You can type in those industries and then yeah, you can go to those and see that information. I think it just depends on what your use case is. And if you know that they're using a specific hinge maker, you can type in the name of that business and then find it. So here you select industries, and here, I guess we don't have a hinge maker or at least a hinge maker with the name, in that term. But yes, you could absolutely do that. All right. Any other questions about the competition tool? I promised a very interactive session. Nicole, thank you for helping me out, but I imagine some others may have some questions. Or maybe you're just saving them to the end. Either way, I'll continue to try my best. But if you do have specific questions, please ask them. I think it'll really make it a little bit more interesting. And I think I mentioned this, we can export the information to a PDF. So in this case, I don't have any customers. I only put suppliers and competitors. And you can see you can generate a report. And then you can take that and do with it what you will. So let's move on to the advertising tool. I'll show you this. based on the example that I did. So let's move to dentists. And I believe, keep me honest, I think St. Albans is where I wanted to use as an example. So here we just made a huge change. We're in St. Albans and we are looking to advertise our dentist business. And I want to be more specific about this. Talking about dentistry is very general. I will talk about something that's meaningful to me. I am a father of 2 daughters, a 5-year-old and 10-year-old. I'm sorry, she just turned 6 last week, 6-year-old and a 10-year-old. And they hate the dentist. They hate needles. They hate everything about it. I live in Austin, and we started searching for a dentist where there were fewer tears, fewer complaints. We found a person who specialized in family dentistry in a suburb just north of Austin, so about 25 miles away. And what he does is he has flat panel TVs mounted on the ceiling with wireless headsets, and he uses nitrous instead of needles. So my daughters are watching My Little Pony, and they're on laughing gas, and there's fewer tears, fewer everything. But we have to drive farther, and you know, he's a little bit more expensive. He happened to be the city of Austin, both the city of Cedar Park, where he started, were clients of ours. He actually started with 1 location. He now has 5 locations in the Austin metro area. Let me show you how he used the tool. So we're looking at total annual revenue right now. This is the Jerry Maguire way of thinking about advertising. Show me the money. Who's spending the money? I'm going to send them ads. Totally great way of thinking about advertising. But he had a slightly different model. So one, he knew that the service that he was offering was unique. So he actually said people are going to drive farther from farther around to access things. 28 zip codes is a lot of zip codes to advertise in. The other thing is he was a family dentist. So let's be old enough that you have teeth. So let's say 5, right? Not so old that you started losing them. That's a different type of dentistry. And so we just went from, I'm going to go even younger. Apparently there I went too young. But West Virginia is skewing a little bit younger than Austin is. So I went from 5 and 43. We just went from 28 zip codes to 13 because this is our target demographic from 5 to 43. And let's be very transparent. He's gonna charge more than a regular dentist. So maybe we boost the average household income to 40,000. Okay, there we go, 50,000. Now we're at 9. So we started with 28 places to advertise just based on money. And now we're down to 9. This is a much more manageable place to target advertising for a small business. But we're going to now turn this on its head. He's starting a new dental clinic, and he doesn't want to focus on where the most money is because he's starting a new business. Why don't we look at underserved markets, areas that are investing in dental care but aren't spending that money in their location? So now we just switched how we're doing the analysis. So now we're looking at areas that even if I am in a fixed location, these are areas that are already used to traveling, so I can advertise my current location, or I might look into expanding in these areas. And so these specific zip codes, Ona, Danville, Charleston, these are the areas, and not just any zip code in Charleston, Charleston 25313. And I'm getting all of the information about these specific zip codes. I'm going to get the breakdown. And as I mentioned, you can take any of these reports, export those to PDF, and you're going to see dentist 25 miles, median age between 5 and 43, household income greater than 50,000. These are the areas that I want to target. And here are the criteria that I adjusted on the filters. So I can manage targeted marketing in 8 zip codes. They're going to match the exact criteria that I'm looking for. And I know that every dollar that I spend on marketing is going to be maximized because this is my target market. So this is the advertising tool. Let me just kind of pause there, ask if you have any questions about this module in particular. Okay. So I shared information.
Mario, you know, I have a question.
And I want to hear it.
Is there any information that says, you know, here's approximately how much you should be spending on marketing or advertising, or here's an average marketing budget for your type of business or your industry?
No, so we don't have benchmarks on that right now. We continue to expand our offerings. So for instance, all of the information that you're seeing here on hours and social media presence, this is all new. Matter of fact, Charleston is one of the first communities to have this in the United States, these specific KPIs. So you are in a better place than Cleveland or Dallas or some of our other clients. So I think you should feel great about that, but that level of information that you have, we don't have. And it's something we might add, but not really the intention of the tool. That's like the power user type of analysis that is not it's not really where we're focused. We're trying to get people to take the first step. And then they can work with experts on answering some of those questions.
And certainly that's going to be dependent on the individual business too. I mean, if you find out that you don't have as many customers or your revenues aren't where they should be, then this helps you to take steps to improve that. And some of that may be advertising or marketing. If I can, Mario, I just want to address a question that popped up in the chat from Dawn, and Armando answered part of this. Dawn wanted to know if this covered the whole state. She couldn't find Barbersville. And Dawn, I just wanted to clarify a little bit. We had to specify a particular geographic area that we covered. And so we can't just pick the whole state. So we have to cover really our service area, which is the Charleston Metropolitan Statistical Area. And that expands into those counties that Armando listed in the chat. So it's not fair for us to cover the whole state. You know, someone up in the Northern Panhandle, there may be an organization that wants to provide this tool to their, community as well. So we're focused on the Charleston Metropolitan Statistical Area and our service community where that extends. The Huntington Metropolitan Statistical Area is separate from Charleston. So just wanted to explain that. Thank you, and sorry to jump in, Mario.
No problem. As I said, the more interactive it is, the more confident people are going to feel about this. And again, we're only looking at 3 use cases. I mean, there's literally an infinite amount of combinations. Well, it may not be infinite, but the exponential increases, it becomes functionally infinite. And here's an example of this. I was showing you, how this could be used in a B2C example, right, for a dentist. But we can do the same thing with business to business. So I was looking at an example of the carpenter business. So maybe we are that small carpentry shop and we do want to build boutique homes, but we don't know, where to advertise. It may be different from B2B. You may not be advertising on Instagram, Twitter, the local newspaper, but there are probably professional magazines, professional websites where, trade publications, things like that you might use. Well, let's look at this example from a B2B example. So I'm a carpenter, but I want to look at advertising in the single family home house construction market. On the filters here, you notice that there were filters for the consumer side. Maybe we'll drive farther, 60 miles, right, to build a house. That seems reasonable, right? The hours are different, less traffic. But I want to focus not on, the consumer side. I want to focus on boutique home builders. So not the Lennar, KB Homes, Horton, Cal Atlantics. I want to focus on where there are fewer employees for smaller single build. So I can go here and go at most 10. And now I went from 128, I think, zip codes. And now I'm saying I only want to know areas that have home builders that are small, 7 to 10 people in this home building company. So the information can be provided just like the competition tool or the benchmarking tool, B2B or B2C. Whatever your use case is, the tool can supply that information. So the questions, where should I advertise? Who should I target? That comes from, the marketing company, the business owner, the entrepreneur. But the answers can be generated by SizeUp, regardless of whether it is B2C, B2B, or anything else. So that is the third module that we looked at. The My Business tells you objectively how your business or your prospective business is performing. The competition tool allows you to understand the entire ecosystem that you're operating in, understanding supply chain and even prospecting. And then the advertising tool helps you optimize every dollar that you spend in advertising, and also help understand the overall market that you are marketing to, and the capacity to absorb your services and products. So if there are any questions about those three, we're going to move over to the demographic tool as soon as we answer those questions. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move over to the demographics tool. So I mentioned earlier, I was like, I'm not going to get too much into the heat maps, because you have a really powerful tool that can dive down into very specific things. So we can, of course, just do analysis based on various political geographies. So there's St. Albans, we can look at Charleston. These are the things that you see all the time, right, on news reports. This many people, these are the trends. We can look at consumer expenditures by this, but businesses generally don't care about political boundaries that much outside of taxation, licensing, and things of this nature. They're going to sell their burgers or services to wherever they can. So let's go ahead and choose a very specific, I just picked 1400. And I want to look at a demographic overview, and you notice that there's minutes and miles. In this case, let's go ahead and create a report. So 10 miles from this specific address, not generic information, there are 158,237 people. I can see the breakdown between men and women, age, race, household income, labor force status, total number of housing, educational attainment, lots of different categories. So that's one way to think about it. I think this is really valid, especially where there's multimodal transportation. But let's assume like we're most people and we drive cars. Maybe I am running that burger shop and I'm less interested in demographics. I want to know what people are spending dining out. So now we're going to look at consumer expenditures. So we just switched from a radius report to the polygon that is the drive time for these particular 15 minutes. Not surprisingly, you can get farther on an interstate or a freeway. So we kind of extend in those areas than others. And we're looking for dining out because we're running a restaurant. So let's go ahead and look at food away from home. And what I'm doing now is I'm looking at the metro area. Oh, this is really interesting. I can see concentrations where people are spending, and then I can actually see what the average expenditures are. So I can look at things both aggregate and then per capita. And maybe I'm not a regional restaurant that's drawing people out for the special night, for the date night. Maybe I want to actually look at just my neighborhood. So you notice we just went from zip codes, and if we zoomed out further, we could go to county, state mapping. Now I'm looking at hyper local information. We're looking at one neighborhood versus another, both in total and then average household expenditures. So we can do the analysis to the level that is most meaningful to the particular marketing plan, business plan, whatever it may be for those businesses. And we have a really cool other way of looking at things too. So I showed you both political geography, city, county, metro area, and we looked at it around an address. Let's say that you really know your labor shed. So I'm going to click on this within a boundary tool. And I'm going to say, oh, I know exactly. I'm a home builder. I'm looking for carpenters. And I know that they're going to come. There's huge construction problems there on the highway. I don't think that part will go around. I happen to just not like this part of town, whatever it is. So we've created this polygon here. And I really want to understand, this is what I think is my labor shed. So I'm going to go ahead and select labor force, and I'm going to create a report here. And I'm going to find out all about the businesses and the workers in this specific polygon. And so I can see that there's 7,000 businesses, about 113 employees, and I can scroll through all of the information related to the size of the businesses, the types of businesses. And just as I showed you before, when you were analyzing your business, we can actually go from looking at mining and construction and say, that's not specific enough for me, right? So we're out of restaurants, we're going to Italian. Now we're looking at mining and construction. We want to get even more specific. So we're going to leave these behind. We're heading towards pizza. And I'm saying, I'm building homes. I don't need to look at heavy construction workers. I want to look at general construction workers. I'm not building bridges and high rises. And I want to see where those general construction workers are aligned. And I can see it both in terms of as a percentage of the workforce, right? Or I can look at where the density of those workers are located. So again, I can look at it as percentage or aggregate numbers, and then I can focus my recruiting efforts, whatever it may be in these various areas. And I can do it based on a custom polygon that I drive because I know my business better than anyone else. I just need someone to tell me the answers to the questions that I have. So this is the demographic tool. It is super powerful, so you can target the very specific characteristic that you want, whether it's by drive time, whether it's by political geography, political boundaries or whatnot, and in any category that you want. And what you're going to notice, of course, is that you can dive into any of these things, but we respect privacy. So if you want to use this to identify 20 to 29-year-olds, you can actually see the concentration of where they are. Now, mind you, this is not supposed to be a dating application, but you can get down into the neighborhood level if you need to target where there's a higher percentage or number, but you do one at a time. So we could look at African-American, or we could look at households with a higher net worth. All of these things are one at a time. So we're giving you the information that you need. You can overlay that information together, but we're still respecting the privacy of the consumer or the business that is being analyzed. And that is the demographic tool. So just a quick review, 4 modules in SizeUp Charleston. The My Business tool provides objective information about your performance. The competition tool really helps you understand the entire ecosystem that you're working in. The advertising tool maximizes every dollar that you spend, and the demographic tool allows you to target hyper-local, hyper-specific information on the criteria that matters to you, whether it's the consumer spending, or the unique businesses and labor force that's available to you. So unless there's other things you want me to show, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and we have left plenty of time, I hope, for Q&A. And if you don't ask questions, I'm going to get a far sense of superiority, and Armando is going to find me unmanageable in the coming weeks. So please poke holes in my presentation or ask me questions that I can build up on. Save Armando, everyone.
Please, please.
Well, that was really great, Mario. This is such an exciting tool. I mean, I can imagine Susie, one of our team members here, she's our VP of Community Development. She's working with a lot of small businesses right now, and I know she loves all this kind of demographic stuff. And as we always joke about, this would be really easy to go down a rabbit hole. And just so much information. It's really fantastic. I do have a sort of a different kind of question, not about specifically what you showed us, but more from the standpoint as trainers, as we're working with businesses. I mean, what are some of, as trainers, what are some of the common, I guess, common questions or things we really need to understand as we're teaching others how to use the tool?
Well, I think the really important thing is to understand that there are almost like an infinite set of use cases. And if I'm talking to the business, I'm going to talk to them about their business, and they're going to know their business, right? We're asking questions, we're generating answers. But in general, if I'm training someone, I do try to take examples from kind of like 3 business sectors that are intuitive to people. So one is retail. So it could have been a shoe shop. It didn't have to be a burger restaurant. It could have been a coffee shop, could have been a beauty salon. And then I focus on B2B, which is, a business selling to and buying from other businesses. And then on advertising, just anyone who's driven on the freeway recently, attorneys advertise, right? Dentists advertise. So I tend to focus on professional services for the advertising module. I think it's intuitive. I mean, you could use this tool to get into like ball bearing manufacturing. It's just that not that many people know about that. But coffee shops are pretty safe, right? Most people, even if they're vegans, have had a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. So I would look at those examples as a way to introduce the concepts in the module to the people in a way that then they can frame and then dive deeper into as they start to look at their specific industry, their marketing plan, their business plan. I hope that answered the question at a very high level. I think the other thing that people are always aware of is seems wonderful, but where's the data source? And maybe I can share a little bit about that. Let me see if I can share my screen with you guys. Okay, so what you saw right now was actually a mashup of hundreds of different data sets. We work with the same major national data providers that, you know, as the baseline for Google Maps and Apple and Maps and Yelp and everything else. But we put it together in interesting ways. We tend to think of things as like being in buckets. So if we're talking about the industry information, which we would call technically the firmographic information, we have hundreds of different public data sources. And it also depends on the type of industry that you're in, right? Attorneys have to pass the CPA, accountants have their own process. If you have public companies that are traded on the stock market, they have to issue quarterly reports. So depending on the industry that you're in, the information will be coming from different sources. We update the business information every 3 months. But that information isn't like instant. It's anywhere from 3 to 6 months in arrears. So the business information that you're seeing, not just the business points, but all the data associated with that can be anywhere from 3 to 9 months in arrears. We're trying to speed that up, but it's the best that we can do right now, because it's not just as simple as like, oh, here's a new business, boom, it's on the map, because we also need all of the data associated with the business, employees, revenue, things of that nature. So we do try to provide as meaningful information as possible, as quickly as we can, but no data source is perfect, and nor are we. So that's the industry information. On the demographic side, so when you're looking at, you know, healthcare expenses, the benchmarking side as well, we're getting information from different public and private sources. So Bureau of Labor Statistics is helping us with turnover. Bureau of Economic Analysis is helping us with healthcare costs. So depending on the very specific tool you're looking at, you might be getting different data sources for those tools. So to bring this full circle, the advertising, when we're looking at underserved areas, we're actually mashing up 3-month updated business information, revenue information, with consumer expenditures that are updated every 6 months. So, you know, you don't call it like, you know, 4.5-month updated, but it's a mashup of that data. So we keep things as updated as possible. And then we display everything on Google Maps as a base layer. I think it's important to be able to talk about these various data sets so people can understand where it's coming from and to set their expectations on kind of how all of the data gets put together. So I would talk about that so that they can understand